In my Spy X Family video, I mentioned that at one point I was a fan of My Hero Academia. Well, since then I've been getting back into it, and while I no longer have any interest in the actual canon story, apart from if my favourites make it out alive and with their characters intact, I still find a lot of enjoyment in the concept and potential of the story and world. One of the many interesting things about revisiting My Hero is that both my understanding of critical analysis has greatly improved, as well as my appreciation for certain characters, so in turn my understanding of said characters and their arcs is much less shallow and more nuanced than it was. As a result, I've been thinking about My Hero and its underwhelming writing of women, to say the least, both in the blatant sexualization and superficial characterization. The most notable example of this is that of Yaoyorozu Momo. Momo is a contentious character for some. Momo, or Yamomo to her friends, is a main character and esteemed student of the hero school UA, getting in through recommendations alone, unlike many of the others, who had to take the entrance exam to attend UA. She's the smartest member of her class academically, and arguably the most tactical and resourceful character in the story. By nature, she has to be resourceful. The very semantics of her quirk demand it to actually function effectively. Momo has the ability to create almost anything using her body fat, as long as she understands and knows what she's creating is made up of. She has to know everything down to the molecular structure. For her, the ability to memorize large amounts of data and information is a necessity, and an incredibly useful skill even outside of her quirk. She also learns to operate and think fast under an insane amount of pressure. She becomes an indispensable strategist with her quick wit and skill. You, my hypothetical viewer, are probably thinking, this all sounds fine so far, Wizard. What's the deal? And are waiting for the other shoe to drop. Well, in this case, dear viewer, the other shoe would be a side effect of a much larger, more insidious issue that affects a lot more than just My Hero. While Momo is a very compelling character with both her initial characterization and an appealing character design for the most part, but we'll get to that. See, the problem is, of course, the author fucked it up. See, Yaoyorozu starts the series as a rather blunt character, openly chastising many of the main characters on reckless and self-destructive behavior, as well as finding Bakugo's attitude less than charming to start with. I know that a lot of people initially confused her ambition and confidence as arrogant, but it's rather clear this read of her character is either out of ignorance or bad faith, but we'll talk about it anyway. Momo's initial characterization is a classic case of the gifted child, existing in a state of perfection only to have her confidence and subjective crushed by her own expectations. Throughout the course of the story, Momo's self-worth is slowly being whittled down, whether it be robbing her of a position she is qualified for, or her admiration for Todoroki based off her own insecurities, or whatever the fuck the sports festival was. From Mineta quite literally clinging to Momo for success, to her fight against Tokugami and Dark Shadow, to her and the other girls being tricked into wearing fucking cheerleader outfits. Momo was being punched down repeatedly, and her confidence was fractured because of it. And here's the rub, that was fine to start with. Momo's initial struggle of confidence and finding her sense of self-worth was fine. Her lack of faith is actually addressed in Yaoyorozu Rising. Momo and Todoroki are paired up against Aizawa. The objective of the assignment is either capture Aizawa, who is posing as a villain, or escape. Despite having objections to Todoroki's plan, she goes along with it anyway. She praises him on his quick thinking, to which he says it's nothing. This upsets Momo and distracts her, effectively letting Aizawa surprise them and capture Todoroki. Aizawa coldly tells Todoroki that next time he should listen to his teammate before stalking after Momo. Aizawa sees through her in a sec and can tell she's breaking down. He reminds the audience of a very simple but easily forgotten fact. Momo is still a child and still has the same emotional needs as one. Regardless of how similar she and Todoroki actually are, she has decided he was the superior of the two. A cut above, if you will. When his plan predictively fails, Momo is still reluctant to put hers into motion. Todoroki and Momo work as narrative parallels. They're cut from the same cloth. It's part of the reason she feels so inferior to him. They're so similar, and yet Momo still feels 1,000 miles behind him. Despite her doubts, she rises to the challenge, even impressing Aizawa with her willingness to take advantage of his condition and her leadership skills once pushed. Their victory and Aizawa's words drive Momo to tears. Her confidence slowly but surely built up again, and that was fine. A good and compelling arc, but for whatever reason they couldn't stop beating Momo down there. Whether it be Momo being kneecapped for plot convenience to the aggressive sexualization of her both in and out of canon, Yaoyorozu's effectiveness and skill is consistently being toyed with for the purpose of plot convenience and hyperinflated tension. Despite Momo's potential potential as an extremely powerful hero, she seems to always go down early in a fight, whether it be from the enemy slowly wearing her down because they know her quirk is a finite limit, or Momo pushing herself to the point of malnutrition because intentionally or not, Momo's character design is inherently sabotaging her potential as a character and future hero. Let's talk character design, shall we? The cruel irony of those that claim Yaoyorozu's design is like that for the sake of practicality, and not because the artist has an unhealthy fixation on a fictional teen's chest, is that in reality, Momo's design ultimately limits her abilities and character on a core level. As we've already discussed, the plot seems to bend and twist to somehow take Momo out of the running as early into a conflict as possible, purely there in the background to make shit for other people, and then pass out because she's worn herself thin, quite literally. It's telling that over the course of the story, neither Momo or the other characters such as Aizawa, their teacher, seem to realize the troubling implications of this. As a refresher, Momo can create almost anything using her own body fat as fuel, meaning that making items is burning away at her energy and fat at a highly aggressive pace. In comparison, here is Fat Gum. Fat Gum is a pro hero that, just like Momo, has a quirk that relies on having a large amount of body fat and actively becomes less effective the less fat he has. Now, can you spot the difference between these two character designs? Unlike Fat Gum, Momo's design is inherently detrimental to her potential and ultimately undermines her strategic and intelligent nature, as well as clashes with her actual personality. For all intents and purposes, Momo should be a plus-size woman, not only because it would help diversify the designs of the women in the main cast, but also because it would be irrational for a character that is defined by her sharp mind not to realize such a logical solution to the otherwise finite limit of her abilities. It has been a consistent problem of Momo existing as a glass cannon of sorts. Unfortunately, the problems with her design don't just stop here. Yeah, I said we'd get back to this. Lucky me. There's no point dancing around it. Momo's costume fucking sucks, and here's why. The most glaring issue is that of the chest piece, or lack thereof. Momo's costume can be broken down into 3 individual pieces, not counting her shoes or cloak that got added semi-recently. A red leotard with a large hole that exposes most of her chest down to her navel. A large belt that doesn't actually seem to do anything, and an actual bookshelf attached to the belt. The reason for this design choice is that since the items Momo creates come out of her skin, she as a result has to show a lot of skin for convenience. But anybody that thinks about this for more than 5 seconds would see this excuse for the blatant deflection it is. The design is ill-considered with a glorified swimsuit as a base, no protection of vital areas such as the stomach, face or chest, as well as restricted movement from the chunky belt and unnecessary heels. The design openly ignores that Momo's quirk doesn't just require showing skin, but also fat. Fat is mostly stored on the hips, thighs and stomach. While yes, the chest does store fat as well, just not as much. Not to mention Momo actually uses her hands, elbows and back to create objects such as staffs, cannons and various other things, which means she can create bigger items perfectly fine with just her hands. Also, why is her back covered? On multiple occasions, Momo has ripped the back of her costume open in order to create larger items, and why out of every part of this girl's body is the back covered? Why is the back covered, Horikoshi? Nope, I need a minute, nope. I'm fine. An important part of character design is, well, the character part of it. Momo's character is being undermined for the sake of fan service. Momo Yaoyorozu is a brilliant mind with deep-rooted confidence issues born from unrealistic expectations and imposter syndrome. She's practical and logical, kind and passionate. This design says nothing about Momo or her character. Bakugo's design is heavy, sharp, it speaks to his explosive and violent personality. Jiro's design, while bland, fits with her aesthetic and inspirations to become a hero. For a character that is supposedly so strategic and realistic, why is that not reflected in her design? Why does she not have shoes more similar to Deku's or Jiro? Why does she not have knee pads or any form of physical protection? Yet again, fan service. Jesus Christ, I fucking hate my job. This outfit and by extension multiple scenes in both the manga and anime exist only for the purpose of objectifying Momo. Whether it be camera angles lingering lingering on her body for a little bit too long, or canon itself acknowledging the poor treatment Momo has received. From being tricked into wearing fucking cheerleader outfits along with the rest of the girls because Mineta lied and said Aizawa had said it was mandatory for all at the sports festival, something that was clearly uncomfortable for her and she felt extremely embarrassed about. Mineta and Denki openly fantasize about seeing the girls in revealing swimsuits, and Mineta attempting on multiple occasions to sneak or look into the girls' changing rooms and bathhouse. Even though Mineta's plots mostly fail, it doesn't actually mean anything because the audience still sees the girls undress. And this is supposed to be funny. You're supposed to laugh. Not to mention during the intern arc, both Momo and another girl are taken on by a pro hero only to find out she chose the girls not for their skill or potential as heroes, but because of their appearances so she could use them in a fucking hair commercial. That is some out of character and disturbing self-awareness on the author's part. And before somebody says something stupid, I'm not saying I inherently dislike sexual characters. I've come to the defense of the concept of Midnight in the past. I find Midnight fascinating in theory. I like that she leans into her sexuality as her hero persona, and I like that she uses the R-rated hero as her branding. But regardless of how interesting Midnight could have been, she's still written by a man that doesn't know how to write women and thinks being sexual around minors is funny. Also clearly doesn't understand women's anatomy because Christ on a stick, that's not how anything works actually. The misogyny in My Hero Academia isn't anything new or unique. Misogyny has plagued the comic book industry in particular for decades, and it's so built into the superhero genre that most people don't even notice it. The treatment of Yaoyorozu and the rest of the women in My Hero is nothing short of disappointing and insidious. Momo has the potential to be one of the most interesting and substantial characters in the whole series, but the writing at every single opportunity passes that up in favor of placing Momo right back to where she started and refusing to give her the time and development she deserves and should have gotten back in season 2. With the extremely compelling story of a burnt-out, gifted child losing her confidence and sense of self-identity, and the painful, exhausting process of claiming that confidence back. If Momo was allowed to break outside of her shallow characterization, imagine how enriched her character would become. She has multiple strong connections to various characters in the cast, with Jiro, Midoriya, Todoroki, Aizawa, and so many other characters. Why is such a charming, intelligent, interesting, and powerful character getting sidelined at every opportunity? Momo, and by extension every female character in this cast, has the potential to have a greater impact and better stories than what we're already getting. Momo, despite all that she could have been, is limited by the misogynistic writing of her creator. The writing of My Hero doesn't respect women, and it certainly doesn't respect Momo. And frankly, I'm angry. And frankly, I'm annoyed. I'm angry that such a good character is routinely kneecapped and never gets to shine in the way she should. I'm annoyed that her design undermines her actual personality. I'm upset that Momo is so often the center of Mineta's harassment and schemes, and it's played for laughs. And I'm frustrated that so few people see the problem here. In short, Momo is a deeply charming and lovable character with an insane amount of wasted potential that will never fully be realized because of the misogynistic writing and push for her to fit into superficial beauty standards. Momo could be operating both in canon and out at a much higher level than she is, and I find myself lamenting the fact we could have had a better version of this character. Me and my friend Noodle, go follow them by the way, have discussed multiple ways to improve on her character, even coming up with the idea of Momo struggling with her weight because she's trying to fit traditional beauty standards, and in the process it actually ends up negatively affecting her quirk, and she has to learn to love her body and continue to grow her confidence as both a person and a hero. Yaoyorozu Momo is an insanely charming and interesting character that is plagued by poor writing, lackluster development, and misogyny, both from the creator and fandom at large. As a result, Momo hasn't got the time or respect she deserves, and her potential is left rotting at our feet. So, in short, Horikoshi's a little bitch, Momo deserves better, so like the vulture I am, I've taken the corpse of My Hero Academia and it's mine now. So, if you excuse me, I'm going to pass out and then read a Racer Mike fanfiction. Get fucked, creeps.